I love me some big RPGs. Getting lost in a massive world filled to the brim with lore and characters and side quests and more side quests. Jesus, that's a lot of side quests. Don't get me wrong, I love being able to check off a bunch of side content when I play these types of games, but I find myself sometimes getting overwhelmed by the amount of content that gets presented to me all at once. I'm Ouroboros, and I have side quest fatigue. Okay, don't get me wrong, I will rarely complain about a game giving me too much content. Like, oh no, I make too much money at work, or oh no, this cake is just too delicious. This is definitely first world problems, but it's something that I've noticed especially while playing Xenoblade X. It's a game with minimal story. I mean, there's only a handful of story missions and literally hundreds of side quests, some of which have more dialogue and interesting plot points than in the actual story missions. But too much of a good thing can become tiring. Variety is the spice of life and all that crap. That's why you can see a wide variety of topics on this channel. I know that I don't need to do all the side content, and I'm usually not a completionist type of person. I typically complete around 75% of a game, enough that I feel like I've experienced plenty of what the game has to offer, but not so much that I feel like I'm forcing myself to complete these side quests. Games should be fun, and that's usually my sweet spot. I think I've realized that there are so many games that are just bloated with side content. I wish they would take the time they use to create these fun little side stories and further develop the main cast. That's not to say that they should just cut side quests altogether, far from it, but I think that a lot of games would really benefit from spending more time expanding upon a smaller cast. Clearly, like I said, I love my RPGs. How many times have you been introduced to a new character, whether they end up being in the party or not, when it feels like the main characters need more time on screen? I want to know the ins and outs of the party. It doesn't have to be connected to their character development, but if you could add small little touches to them, like talking about what they like to eat, or even the most mundane things. Those extra little tidbits make any character feel more alive and three-dimensional. There are times when it feels like everything that a character says or does is for the sake of the plot or to further themselves, and as weird as this sounds, I don't think that's really all that necessary. Small little goofy moments are what make characters feel so real and relatable. Because some games bite off more characters than they can chew, it makes the roster feel incredibly wide, but much shallower. Like, do I really need dozens of different, mildly developed characters in a game when I could realistically enjoy having 8? It becomes a game of quality versus quantity, depth versus breadth. When you end up doing a bunch of side quests that are mostly disconnected from one another, it segments the game more and more. Like, yeah, there's this existential threat looming in the background, but first I have to go run a few errands and find little Susie's missing cat. Even with important missions, it can feel like there's a dissonance in urgency. I noticed this the most way back when I first played Torna of the Golden Country. In that expansion, the game forces you to finish a certain number of side quests before you can advance the main plot. To this day, it's the only piece of Xenoblade content that I don't really want to complete. I don't like being forced to pause the main story to go do a bunch of unrelated objectives that all end up having glowing quest icons anyway. That's the beauty about having side quests. They're there when you want to mess with them, and you can shelve them when you want to. But when a game puts such an overwhelming emphasis on them, I feel like I'm not getting the most out of the game if I just ignore them. I know that side quests are much easier to program, develop, and write than the main story, and I understand that games now are moving away from fetch quest and kill 10 of this enemy type of filler side content. But I wish there was a better ratio of main to side content objectives. I don't know if this is exacerbated by the ballooning game sizes. Most games have to be bigger and better than the last to draw in enough people to offset development cost. Maybe I'm just rambling at this point, but it's something I've been thinking about for a while now. And there's nothing wrong with disagreeing with my viewpoint. If you're someone who adores having an overwhelming amount of side content, That's great. You're probably saying, well, if you don't like having this many side quests, then just don't do them, or just find a different game to play. And that's not entirely false. I do play plenty of games that are smaller in size, and I enjoy those. And I enjoy big games, and there are plenty of games that I skip throughout the year. I don't know, it could be a consequence of growing up, now that I have less time, and let's be honest, I'm way more tired every day than I used to be. It can be hard to find the mental fortitude to sit through a series of side quests that may not be my cup of tea. They may highlight characters I'm not interested in, I might end up in a fight that I'm underleveled for, or I might just aimlessly wander around looking for my objective because I'm either blind or I can't get the drops that I'm looking for. Hey, at least it's not as bad when I played games like Destiny where the only objective was to look around for side content. I don't mind grindy games, I think they can be relaxing at times. There's something to be said about games where you can just turn your brain off and have mindless fun. I think Monster Hunter has slowly shifted away from the ridiculous grind of previous titles. Instead of forcing you to farm for very specific drops, you still have some of those, but you can sometimes use a variety of materials that have point values based on rarity. That's a system that I've really enjoyed. It'd be nice if there were things like that in other games as well. Instead of having to get 10 of a very specific drop, I can just trade in a number of any drops from that monster. That's just one idea. I guess in the end, it would just be the same as a kill quest. I'm definitely not a dev, but they might be able to come up with something. However, I don't think there's a perfect solution here. Like I said earlier, this is definitely a first world problem. Oh no, there's too much content for me to play. Whatever will I do? Maybe I need to further expand the games I play. Maybe I'm more interested in cinematic games as opposed to RPGs. It's all a part of growing up and evolving and refining my own personal taste. I'm actually curious, is this something that anybody else has felt in recent years? Pretty much all of my videos are opinion pieces. You don't necessarily need to agree with me. However, I like opening up these dialogues in the comments. Well, respectful conversations. Don't be that asshole who's just a jerk in the comments. I guess in hindsight, it's not necessarily the amount of content that I take issue with, but rather how it's spread out throughout the course of the game. Regardless, I feel that some games are putting too much emphasis on side content right now. I'd much rather see that energy focused into a more important story and/or gameplay moments. It's not all the time, but right now I'm really struggling with side quest fatigue. Thanks for watching.